Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Boy oh boy do I have some updates for you. Today's video is mostly about a new trio that I have with Vinci that was designed to pair with my recent Embrace Opacity palette. But before that, we have several other juicy updates for you over at Vinci as well. First, let's hop in our time machine and revisit my first palette with Vinci, which launched in April of 2019. I love this palette, I truly do. I still use it regularly, and I have needed several refills over the years. However, as some of you may be aware, we are losing another color near and dear to many of our hearts. P048 Quinacridone Burnt Orange, kin to the original Quinacridone Gold, has also been discontinued. There are a couple of watercolor companies that still have a limited supply, but many brands have stopped selling this pigment and are having to reformulate their mixes that include it. Since P048 was in my original palette, that meant deciding on a replacement. My options were either to try and go with a similar earth orange or replace it with something else entirely. However, while making this decision, I also wanted to reevaluate the palette as a whole. Was everything still working? Were there any colors that I wasn't using anymore? The answers were yes, and also a little bit yes. Listening to feedback over the years for this palette, talking with my patrons, and just visually looking at my own palette, there were two colors that I wanted to address. The first was pretty easy for me. In theory, color theory specifically, Vinci or dioxazine violet is a, quote, necessary color. It neutralizes yellows. It's a popular color for mixing clean violets. It mixes interesting darks, but we already have all of those bases covered. I have plenty of earthy browns already. We have plenty of blues to mix with a PV19 for bright purples, and we have lots of dark mixing colors. So I am replacing it with Theo Indigo Violet. This is a color that is similar to Quinacridone Violet, both of which are extremely cool pinks or very warm violets depending on how you look at it. It mixes gorgeously with blues or greens to make various purples, and we can even mix it into some of our earth tones for some more jewel-toned reds and browns. Secondly, I am replacing Perylene Maroon. Please keep your pitchforks and torches at bay. I promise it's not leaving my collection as a whole with Vinci products. We just need to put a pin in it for a couple of minutes. The reason I'm ousting this color from this specific palette is because one of the main critiques for this palette is that there were too many reds. I know a lot of people would prefer to see Vinci Red leave instead. However, I use that color a lot. It mixes the cleanest oranges, which my palette is otherwise lacking, so I felt like it needed to stay. I personally don't use Perylene Maroon much in the context of this color selection specifically. I find that with the other reds and earth reds available, all my bases are covered, so it feels redundant. I know many of you love this color, so to try to calm the Perylene Maroon stans, the color that I am replacing it with is my new Stormy Blue, which I hope you'll be thrilled with as well. More than anything, this palette needed a dark neutral. I missed it tremendously. With the addition of Stormy Blue to the Vinci lineup, I immediately asked them if I could add it to this palette, and they said yes. Now that we've got our purple updated and made a noble sacrifice for Stormy Blue, I confirmed to myself that I could safely replace Quinacridone Burnt Orange with another earth orange. It's terracotta, right? I mean, anyone, you all saw that coming. If you want to hear why I love this color, check out my Embrace Opacity video because that's how I fell in love with it, but I am taking too long. So next up, our Wildlife palette. Easier, straightforward, simple updates. We are swapping out PY74 for PY154. It's my favorite yellow. I think the only reason I didn't put it in either of my palettes to begin with was because it was already in some of Da Vinci's other palettes. However, it seemed silly that my favorite yellow wasn't in either palette, so I asked and they said yes. Secondly, we're giving the boot to neutral tint and replacing it with, say it with me everyone, Denise's gray. Easy swap. Before we put Denise's gray in a tube, I had already mixed it up and kept it in the middle of this tin in a full pan, so I don't think I need to explain any further. Okay, awesome. Old palettes updated, refreshed, ready to tackle the new year. We all need new outfits from time to time. Next update. My new colors, they're in tubes now. I know a lot of you are waiting for them, so make sure to head on over and grab them on up. But before you do, please make sure to click on the affiliate link in the description of this video. I automatically get commissions from the palette sales when you purchase them, but not my tubes of paint unless you use the affiliate links. Thank you kindly in advance. And what's that you say? You wish there was a convenient place to find all of this new information in and reference the mixing charts? Well, I have that covered too. I have been working my tush off on a complete revamp of my website. You can find all of my Da Vinci products there, as well as information on my Patreon, my classes, my merch, my mailing list, all the things. It is best viewed on a desktop or laptop, but I have also optimized it the best I can for mobile as well. It's real easy to remember, okay? It's my name, DeniseSoden.com, but of course there will be a link in the description as well for your convenience. So, are we ready for the new trio? We better be, because I just hit page 4 of my script, so I'm taking too long, that's on me. My first trio with Da Vinci, my first project ever with them, was called Moody Trio. My second trio may have you feeling some deja vu, so we decided to call it Moody Too, as in Moody also. Like the first trio, this one has a red, a blue, and a green. However, where the first round of trios were a multi-artist project where around a dozen artists all picked 3 different colors as a way of sharing some of their favorite colors, this trio was specifically designed to pair with the Embrace Opacity palette that we just released at the end of December. Allow me to explain. My Embrace Opacity palette has a very clear vision: soft, velvety, atmospheric, opaque watercolors. But some of you might find that limiting. Some of you may want a little bit more pow. Enter the Moody Too Trio. Bold, luscious, moody. You get the idea, right? Here are the colors and what they bring to the table. I told you it wasn't going far. First up, we have Perylene Maroon. We are just going to pluck it off the earth-friendly palette and put it here. There isn't a true red in the Embrace Opacity palette, and this intense deep red is absolutely perfect amongst these colors. We can get rosy pinks, soft peaches, brick reds, purpley grays. What's not to love? Nothing. She's perfect. It's all about the friends you surround yourself with. Next up, who could have possibly seen this one coming? It's Indanthrene Blue, y'all. We have 2 soft, marshmallowy cloud blues on the Embrace Opacity palette already, so what better complement than this dark, saturated blue? My favorite pairing here might look underwhelming in swatch form, but is insanely useful in paintings, and that is with terracotta. It mixes a cool, almost green-leaning brown that is very, very handy. We can get deeper purples, gorgeous dark teals, and even adjust our stormy blue to lean either more blue or more red, depending on if we add more of the Indanthrene Blue or the Indian Red, respectively. Finally, not everyone shares my love of chromium oxide green. So may I present to you Phthalo Green. Okay, fine, people don't always love this color either, but just look at these mixes. We have got emerald green, we have spring green, forest green, and insanely amazing granulating specialty green when we mix it with the violet iron oxide. Gorgeous teals when mixed with the blues or either of my two new colors. But y'all, I want to call your attention to that gray. I love Denise's gray. I'm thrilled with it, no regrets, it's amazing. But phthalo green and lilac are something very special too. And when I saw them, I had to include this color. So we know these colors work beautifully with the Embrace Opacity palette, but how do they do as a standalone trio? I'm so glad you asked. Let's go ahead and roll that footage. I say to myself in an empty room. Okay. Am I ready to drop the sass yet? It's hard to say, but what I can say is that we're going to paint a little ladybug using just these three colors. We're starting off with a light wash of Perylene Maroon on its own, and I'm softening off the edges above the ladybug. The background will be dark in color, so we won't see much of the red, but it will prevent there from being a hard line between the two areas. Next, I'm going in with a loose wash of phthalo green, slightly neutralized with the Perylene Maroon, and cooled off with a touch of the indanthrene blue. I'm placing it all over the leaf, again not having to mind my edges since the background will be darker than this color. I'm splattering a more concentrated version of this green into the wet wash to create texture and doing the same with a little bit of the red. I'm lifting a bit of color that got onto an area that I intended to keep white and then we'll let it dry. After that layer has dried completely, we're going to switch to a smaller size 4 round brush to tackle the details on the head. I'm using a mixture that looks almost entirely black, but is mixed from the 3 colors in this set. It will be used for the ladybug's head, pronotum, I think I said that right, legs, and spots. I'm going to use the same dark mixture for the shadow underneath the insect. It might look too dark right now, but we're going to soften off the wash and keep in mind that both Perylene Maroon and indanthrene blue lose a lot of value as they dry. Therefore, we can expect that this black mixture will also dry lighter. After allowing that area to dry, we're moving back to the red portion of the ladybug to deepen our values, focused on the edges and areas with the most contrast. My goal is to bring form to this shape, making it look rounded instead of flat. I don't need to worry about painting around the spots, but I am trying to preserve a highlight in the middle of that space. Next, we're going to bring a little more form to the leaf by placing a shadow on the underside of the edge. This is a more concentrated version of the green mixture I was using before, probably with a little bit more Perylene Maroon to really knock back the saturation. I carefully, very slightly soften off the upper edge and more freely soften off the bottom edge. I'll add more pigment to the wet wash, which will eventually contribute to the splash background. While that's drying, we can add a second layer to the black areas. As expected, the color lightened as it dried, so we're going to need to add more depth. I'll be switching back and forth between brush sizes 4, 6, and 8, depending on the detail and the amount of water that I want to use in a given area. Using the same dark mixture, we'll place the spots. I still want to keep in mind that the surface is curved, so they won't all be solid black masses. We need to leave some room for a range of values. And now we finally get to do that fun background. This mixture is mostly indanthrine blue, but also has both perylene maroon and phthalo green to deepen it and keep it cool, respectively. I'll place down a lot of pigment, soften off the edges with clean water, place more pigment, and repeat. I work in small sections at a time so that the paint doesn't dry before I can soften off the edges. If an area starts to dry lighter than I want it to be, I can add more pigment before it's fully dry. If you're new to this technique, it might take some practice to find a good rhythm. Blooms will happen, but I am not worried about it in the background, and they can often really add to a piece. I didn't have enough of my dark blue mixed up, and I had to stop to mix more. When you do this, sometimes the resulting mixture is different, and in this case, it was a darker, nearly black color. I didn't bother adjusting it further towards blue since it makes sense for the underside of the leaf to be darker anyway. You can see we're covering up most of the green from before, so there's no need to be meticulous earlier on, but it will show through some places and add interest to our background. Next, I went to darken the spots, and this was kind of a mistake. It's best to paint our midtones before our dark values in most cases, as this dark paint will easily re-wet if we touch a wet brush to it even after it dries. We'll come back to that in a minute after we touch up the other black details. I'm going back to those red midtones, still using the perylene maroon on its own. Now is a good time to mention that ladybugs often have undertones that are yellow or orange, but we don't have that option in this trio. That's okay. You'll see by the end of the painting, we can still paint a pretty convincing piece even with that limitation. I continue to darken the edges, following the contour of the form to really sell this little beetle's roundness. I'm carefully softening off with a smaller brush so that my wet wash doesn't move too far into the center of the shape. I left a little highlight around the bottom edge and am deepening the underside that curves into shadow. And now, the moment of truth. Remember what I said about painting over black? The entire value of the back of the ladybug is too light, so I need to take a leap of faith in my watercolors and hope that this adjustment layer works out. I was immediately worried when that oblong spot started to bleed. However, it ended up being really nice in the end. It actually helped soften off the edges of that spot so that it didn't pull focus away from the head. That's when we can just pretend that we meant to do it and move on. After everything is dry, it's time for some finishing splatters and highlights. I'm using the dark blue background color to pull that blue into the rest of the painting, then using clean water to soften off some of those splatters. And we can use a towel or tissue to dab up any areas that look too dark or out of place. We'll finish off with some selective highlights, nothing too dramatic, and then we'll add some white speckles as well. And that's going to do it for our mega update video. You are all caught up on the 2023 updates for my Da Vinci products, and I'd love to hear what you think. I'm bummed to see quinacridone burnt orange leave us, but I am excited to make room for new palette staples. I hope that you enjoyed looking at the Moody Too Trio. I imagine that many of you already have these 3 colors on hand. I know you do if you have my original earth-friendly palette, so if you do, and you also have my new Embrace Opacity palette, let me know what you think about the combo. If you don't, they are available on Da Vinci's website alongside my other palettes and tube colors. International viewers, I know it sucks that these products aren't available affordably near you. Keep asking your local shops for them, and maybe we can see them overseas in the future. I'm sending huge thanks to Da Vinci for taking a chance on me back in 2018. I am so grateful that I get the opportunity to work on products that I love and share them with all of you. I am going to go make some more heart eyes at my new tube of Denise's gray, so I hope you all have a great week in the meantime. As always, thank you to my amazing patrons. I will see you all in the next video. Until then, happy painting.